Alex parked his old car behind a hardware store, tapping his fingers nervously on the steering wheel. The list Silara had given him sat on the passenger seat, filled with items that made him feel like he was assembling a spaceship. Copper wire, small batteries, a soldering iron, and something called a thermal stabilizer. "I hope she knows what she's doing," Alex muttered, grabbing the list and heading inside. The store was quiet, the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. He wandered the aisles, trying to look casual. As he picked up the items, his mind raced. Silara had warned him about being followed, and every stranger he saw felt like a potential threat. "Can I help you find something?" a store clerk asked, startling him. Alex forced a smile. "Just grabbing some supplies for a project." The clerk nodded and walked away, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He hurried to the checkout, paid for the items, and left without looking back. When he got back to the apartment, Silara was waiting near the window, her glowing patterns faint. She turned quickly as he entered, her golden eyes lighting up. "Did you find everything?" she asked, stepping closer. Alex stood frozen at the door, his mind racing. The man in the dark suit stared at him with unsettling calm, his eyes scanning Alex as if he could see straight through him. "Who are you looking for?" Alex asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "A trespasser," the man replied smoothly. "Someone not from around here." Alex forced a laugh. "Well, it's just me here. I don't think anyone else would fit that description." The man tilted his head, clearly unconvinced. He stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor. "Do you mind if I take a look around? It's standard procedure." Alex's chest tightened. "Actually, I do mind," he said, crossing his arms. "You can't just barge into someone's home without a warrant." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I understand your concern, but this is a matter of security. You wouldn't want to get in the way of that, would you?" Alex clenched his fists, trying not to show how nervous he was. "Look, I don't know who you think you're going to find here, but there's no one else in this apartment. So unless you've got paperwork, you're not coming in." For a moment, the man said nothing. His gaze lingered on Alex, cold and calculating. Finally, he nodded and stepped back. "Very well. But if you see or hear anything unusual, I suggest you report it immediately. It would be unwise to do otherwise." "Noted," Alex said, closing the door firmly. As soon as the latch clicked, he let out a shaky breath and hurried to the pantry. He opened the door to find Silara crouched inside, her glowing patterns dim and flickering. "Who was it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Someone looking for you," Alex replied. "They'd wanted to come in, but I didn't let them." Silara's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her expression remained tense. "They are closer than I thought. I must have left a trail when I landed." Alex stared at her, incredulous. "A trail? You mean they can track you?" She nodded. "To an extent. My tech emits a unique energy signature. They must have picked up on it." "Great," Alex muttered. "So not only are you hiding here, but they can find you. What am I supposed to do about that?" Silara stood, her glowing patterns brightening slightly as she regained her composure. "I can mask the signal, but I'll need time. And your help." "Help how?" he asked, wary. She held up her device. "I need certain materials to repair this. If I can fix it, I can shield my presence and call for extraction." Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine. What do you need?" Silara rattled off a list of items, some of which sounded like they belonged in a sci-fi movie. "Okay," Alex said. "I'll figure it out. But you need to stay hidden. If they come back, we're both—" Alex trudged up the creaky steps of his small apartment building, his thoughts clouded with the stress of another long workday. He unlocked the door and flicked on the lights, expecting the same silence that greeted him every night. But tonight was different. Sitting cross-legged on his couch was a woman, Or at least she looked like one, until he noticed the faint blue glow of her skin, the swirling patterns that pulsed gently like living art. Her silver hair shimmered even in the dim light, and her wide golden eyes locked onto his. "Can I stay at your place, human?" she asked in a calm, almost musical voice. Alex froze. For a moment, he wondered if he was hallucinating. Maybe he was too tired. Maybe it was some kind of prank. But the seriousness in her tone and the fear in her eyes made his heart race. Who are you? And how did you get in here?" he stammered, still clutching the doorknob. "I am Sci-Fi," she said, standing up slowly. Her movements were graceful but cautious. "I mean no harm. Your door was unlocked. I needed shelter." Alex cursed under his breath. He had forgotten to lock the door again. But that wasn't the point. Shelter? From what? Sci-Fi glanced toward the window, her expression tense. "They are looking for me. I cannot stay outside. It's too dangerous. Please, I'll leave as soon as it's safe." Her plea caught him off guard. She looked alien, sure, but there was a vulnerability in her voice that tugged at something inside him. Still, this was crazy. "I don't even know you," Alex said. "How do I know you're not dangerous?" Sci-Fi tilted her head, studying him. Then, slowly, she raised her hand, revealing a small silver device that fit neatly in her palm. She pressed a button, and a soft hologram projected into the air. An image of sleek ships and armored figures with glowing red eyes. "They are bounty hunters," she explained. "I escaped their trap. If they find me, they will kill me." Alex's stomach turned as he stared at the terrifying figures in the hologram. He didn't understand everything she was saying, but it was clear she was in trouble. And somehow, she had ended up on his couch. "You're telling me bounty hunters, alien bounty hunters, are looking for you, and you chose my apartment to hide in?" Sci-Fi nodded solemnly. "Yes, I had no other choice." Alex rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of it all. A part of him wanted to tell her to leave, to call the police or someone who could handle this. But another part of him, the part that hated seeing anyone, alien or not, so desperate, couldn't ignore her plea. "All right," he said finally. "You can stay for now. But if this gets me into trouble—" "It won't," she interrupted, a flicker of hope lighting up her face. "Thank you, human." As Alex locked the door behind him, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever. Alex woke up the next morning wondering if last night had been a dream. The strange glow of his uninvited guest, her golden eyes filled with desperation. It all felt too surreal. But when he walked into the living room, reality hit him like a slap in the face. Sci-Fi was there, crouched by the window, her glowing patterns dimmer now but still mesmerizing. She seemed lost in thought, her hands clutching a small device that looked like an alien version of a smartphone. "You're still here," Alex said, startling her. She turned sharply, her golden eyes wide before softening. "I said I wouldn't leave until it's safe. I meant it." Alex sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Right. Safe. About that, how do I know I'm not putting myself in danger by letting you stay? I mean, bounty hunters. That sounds like a big problem to me." Sci-Fi stood up slowly, her movements as fluid as water. "You are right to worry. I cannot promise there will be no danger, but I will do everything I can to keep you safe." He stared at her, trying to process the situation. "Okay, so what's your plan? You can't just hide in my apartment forever." She hesitated, her glowing patterns flickering faintly. "I need time to repair my communicator. Once it works, I can call for help from my allies. They will extract me." Alex frowned. "And how long will that take?" Sci-Fi tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "It depends on the resources you can provide. Do you have tools? A soldering iron? Wires?" Alex blinked. "What do you think I am? A mechanic? No, I don't have that stuff." Her shoulders sagged slightly, and for the first time, she looked genuinely frustrated. "Then I will find another way. But I need you to trust me. I didn't choose your home by accident." That caught his attention. "What do you mean?" Solara stepped closer, her voice lowering. "Humans have a reputation. You are resourceful, curious, determined. I hoped you would help me." Alex didn't know whether to feel flattered or annoyed. "Well, I guess I'm not like most humans because I have no idea how to handle this." Solara's expression softened. "You've already helped me by letting me stay. That is enough for now." Just then, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Alex's heart skipped a beat. "Are you expecting someone?" he whispered, already knowing the answer. Solara's eyes widened. She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the kitchen. "Hide me," she said urgently. He shoved her into the pantry, shutting the door just as another knock came, louder this time. Taking a deep breath, Alex opened the door to find a man in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. "Good morning," the man said, his gaze cold and calculating. "We're looking for someone. May I come in?" Alex's pulse raced. He knew things were about to get a lot more complicated. Alex's breath echoed in the narrow tunnel as he ran, his feet pounding against the dirt floor. The dim light from his flashlight barely illuminated the walls ahead, but he didn't stop to look. Behind him, the faint sound of footsteps and distant shouting told him Solara's fight was far from over. The tunnel stretched ahead, twisting and turning, a dark maze that seemed to go on forever. His heart raced, but he didn't dare slow down. He had no idea if the bounty hunters had followed them here, or if they were still dealing with Solara's defenses. All he knew was that every second mattered. "Come on," Alex muttered to himself, pushing forward through the claustrophobic darkness. The sound of his own voice was a weak attempt to steady his nerves, but it barely helped. Finally, he saw a faint light ahead, signaling the tunnel's end. He quickened his pace, his muscles aching from the long run. When he reached the opening, he stepped into the night air, taking a deep breath. The city was quiet, far from the chaos he'd left behind, but the tension still hung in the air. He turned back, scanning the tunnel for any sign of Solara. He couldn't just leave her. Not after everything she'd done. "Please, be okay," he whispered. Behind him, a loud crash echoed from the tunnel entrance, followed by shouts. Alex spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. "Solara," he shouted, but the sounds of struggle were already growing louder. Without thinking, he ran back toward the noise, ignoring the pain in his legs. As he neared the opening, a bright flash of light lit up the night, followed by a loud explosion that shook the ground beneath him. "Move!" Solara's voice rang out. Alex rushed forward, his eyes stinging from the dust and debris, only to see Solara standing in the entrance of the tunnel, facing off with two bounty hunters. Her weapon was in her hands, but she was clearly exhausted, her movements slower than before. "Get out of here," Solara shouted, firing a blast that narrowly missed one of the hunters. "I'll hold them off." Alex didn't think twice. He grabbed a piece of debris from the ground and charged toward the hunters, adrenaline kicking in. They didn't see him coming. The hunter closest to him turned just as Alex swung the makeshift weapon at his head, knocking him to the ground. The other hunter was distracted, giving Solara a chance to fire another shot, this one hitting its mark. The hunter dropped to the ground, unconscious. "Alex." Solara's voice was hoarse, but filled with relief. "Run." But Alex didn't want to leave her behind. "We're not done yet." She shook her head. "We are. You need to go. Now." Solara's voice was firm, and Alex could see the pain in her eyes. She was pushing herself too hard. "Please," she added, her voice softer. "You've done enough." Alex hesitated for a moment, torn between his instincts to help her and the reality of the situation. Finally, he nodded. "I won't forget this, Solara." With one last look at her, Alex turned and ran, his heart heavy with guilt. He didn't know if he could help her anymore. But he couldn't stop now. He had to get out, had to make sure the signal had been sent, had to make sure her people were on their way. As he disappeared into the night, the faint sounds of the city swallowed up his footsteps. Solara had given him a chance, and now it was his turn to take it. Alex's heart raced as the knock echoed through the apartment. The voice outside was calm, almost too calm. It was the kind of voice that didn't belong to someone who meant well. Solara stood motionless by the window, her glowing patterns now a sharp contrast to the dim light of the apartment. "Don't open it," Solara whispered, her voice low. Alex swallowed hard, gripping the strange shield generator in his hands. He didn't know how it worked, but there was no time to figure it out. He had to trust Solara. The knock came again, louder this time. "We know you're in there. Open the door." Alex's mind raced. These weren't just people looking for someone. They were professionals, the kind that didn't take no for an answer. "Do you have any other ideas?" Alex whispered, glancing at Solara. She nodded. "We run." "Run? Are you serious?" Alex almost shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're going to catch us." Solara didn't waste time responding. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the back door, her strength surprising him. "Stay close and keep quiet." They slipped into the alley behind the building, the shadows swallowing them as they moved quickly, trying to stay out of sight. Alex's breath was heavy, his feet scrambling to keep up with Solara's swift pace. "What now?" he asked, struggling to stay quiet. "We need to get to a place where we can hide," she replied, glancing over her shoulder. "They'll be tracking the signal I sent. We need to throw them off." Alex's mind raced. "So what? We're supposed to lose them in the city." "Exactly. I have a few tricks up my sleeve." As they turned the corner, Alex could hear the distant hum of a vehicle, something powerful and fast. He didn't have to guess who it was. They were already on their trail. "Come on," Solara urged, pulling him faster. They crossed another street and ducked into an old, abandoned building. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked beneath their feet. Alex's chest heaved, but Solara was already on the move, checking every corner. "We'll stay here for a moment," she said, peering through a crack in the wall. "They'll be looking for us in the streets, but this place is off their radar for now." Alex leaned against the wall, his head spinning. The adrenaline was still coursing through his veins, and his thoughts were scattered. What if they find us? What if they're already here? "They won't," Solara said confidently. "I'm good at staying hidden, but we can't stay here for long." Alex's eyes darted to the exit. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. They were being hunted. But now he wasn't just a bystander. He was in this fight too. "We need to move," Solara whispered, pulling Alex out of his thoughts. "They're getting closer." As they slipped out of the building, Alex realized just how deep he was in. There was no going back now. The chase had begun, and they had to stay ahead of it, no matter what. "You said." The apartment was unusually quiet as Solara worked on her device, her glowing patterns now steady and bright. Alex sat on the couch, watching her with a mix of awe and unease. It had been hours since she started, and her focus never wavered. "How close are you to finishing?" Alex finally asked, breaking the silence. Solara didn't look up. "Very close. Once I activate it, the signal will reach my allies." But what?" Alex leaned forward, sensing hesitation in her voice. "It will also alert the bounty hunters. They will come here," Solara admitted, her tone calm but firm. Alex frowned. "And you waited until now to tell me this. You're basically putting a giant target on my apartment." She paused, meeting his gaze with steady golden eyes. "I have no choice, Alex. My people are in danger. This data is the key to stopping a war. If I don't send it, countless lives will be lost." Her words silenced him. He wanted to argue, to say it wasn't his problem, but he couldn't. Not after everything he'd seen. "Fine," he muttered. "What do we do when they show up?" Silara's glowing patterns shifted slightly, the alien equivalent of a grim smile. "We survive. Together." Before Alex could respond, the device in her hands let out a soft hum. Silara straightened, holding it up to inspect her work. "It's ready." She pressed a button, and the device emitted a faint blue pulse that seemed to ripple through the room. Alex felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity in the air. "That's it?" he asked. Silara nodded. "The signal is sent. Now we wait." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Alex glanced at the door, half expecting it to burst open at any moment. Minutes turned into an hour, and the tension grew unbearable. Silara remained calm, her golden eyes fixed on the window as if waiting for something only she could sense. Then it happened. A faint noise outside, a shuffle of footsteps, too heavy to be casual. Alex's heart pounded as he peeked through the curtains. Two figures stood across the street, their faces obscured by helmets with glowing red visors. "They're here," Alex whispered, his voice barely audible. Silara stood, her glowing patterns intensifying. She grabbed a small, sleek weapon from her belt and handed Alex what looked like a strange metallic disc. "What's this?" he asked, staring at it. "A shield generator," she explained. "If they breach the door, activate it and stay behind me." "Stay behind you? You're like half my size," Alex said, incredulous. Silara smirked faintly. "Size doesn't matter when you have the right tools." A loud knock echoed through the apartment, freezing both of them in place. "Open the door," a deep mechanical voice demanded. Alex looked at Silara, his fear mirrored in her determined expression. The fight had come to them, and there was no turning back now. The streets were eerily quiet as Alex moved swiftly through the city, his mind racing. He didn't look back, but every step felt heavier. He couldn't shake the image of Silara, standing in the tunnel entrance, her weapon raised to protect him. The guilt gnawed at him. He had run. He had left her behind, even after everything she had done for him. But what choice did he have? He wasn't trained for combat, and Silara had made it clear that her fight was hers alone. Still, the weight of abandoning her pressed down on him like a stone in his chest. As he reached the edge of the city, the familiar sights of home seemed distant and unreal. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the silence. Alex pulled it out and checked the message, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the sender. "Silara, I'm okay. The hunters are gone. The signal worked. I'm safe. Thank you." A rush of relief flooded him, followed by an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had made it out. Silara had survived. He leaned against a brick wall, the exhaustion finally catching up with him. The whole night had been a whirlwind. And now, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, he realized that his life had changed forever. He had been part of something bigger than himself. He had helped an alien woman escape a war, and in the process, he had learned something about his own strength. As Alex stood there, taking in the cool morning air, a soft voice broke through his thoughts. "Alex." He turned quickly, his heart leaping in his chest. Standing at the end of the alley was Silara. She looked worn but alive, her golden eyes meeting his with a sense of quiet determination. "Silara," Alex called, rushing toward her. He almost didn't believe it was really her. She smiled faintly. "I told you I would be okay." Alex stopped a few feet away from her, unsure of what to say. I didn't think I'd see you again." Silara nodded. "I knew I could count on you. Your help, it meant more than you know." He swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. "I should have done more. I shouldn't have left you there." Silara reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did enough. You helped me when I needed it most. That's more than many would do." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared experience settling between them. Finally, Silara spoke again. "My people are safe. The war will stop. And I owe it to you." Alex shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And when the time is right, I'll come back. I'll make sure you're never alone again." Alex met her gaze, and for the first time, he believed it. The bond between them wasn't just a result of a shared battle. It was something deeper. "I'll be waiting," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. With that, Silara turned and walked away, disappearing into the early morning light. Alex watched her go, knowing that this wasn't the end, but the beginning of something new. As he turned to head home, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't expected. He had been part of something far bigger than himself, and now he had a new purpose. Alex's heart hammered in his chest as he and Silara sprinted through the maze of alleys, their footsteps echoing against the cold stone. The distant sound of engines roared in the background, signaling that the bounty hunters were getting closer. They couldn't keep running forever. "We need to find help," Silara said, her voice strained but determined. "I know someone who can help us, but we have to make it there without being seen." "Help?" Alex gasped between breaths. "Who's going to help us? These people are tracking you like you're a prize." Silara shot him a quick glance, her golden eyes sharp. "There are allies, people who want to stop the bounty hunters. I just need to reach them." They ducked into a narrow doorway and paused, listening for any signs of pursuit. For a moment, all they could hear was the heavy beat of their own hearts. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, trying to steady his breathing. "A safe house," Silara answered. "It's hidden. No one will find us there unless they know exactly where to look." She turned to him, her expression intense. "Stay close. If we're caught, there's no turning back." Alex nodded, fear rising in his chest. He had no idea what he was really involved in now, but he couldn't leave Silara. Not after everything they'd been through. The two of them moved quickly but carefully, avoiding the main streets and sticking to dark corners. Silara led him through alleyways and down abandoned side roads, her steps confident. Alex, on the other hand, kept looking over his shoulder, expecting to see the bounty hunters at any moment. Finally, after what seemed like hours of dodging and weaving through the city, they arrived at a rundown building in the less populated district. It looked ordinary enough, but Silara seemed to know exactly where she was going. She knocked twice on the door in a rhythm that seemed oddly familiar. A voice from inside responded. "Silara, is it really you?" "Yes," Silara answered, her voice sharp. "Open up, quickly." The door creaked open, revealing a middle-aged man with dark, tired eyes. He had the build of someone who spent years in hiding. His face softened when he saw Silara, but his eyes quickly flicked to Alex. "Who's this?" the man asked, his voice cautious. "This is Alex," Silara said. "He's helping me. We're both in danger." The man studied Alex for a long moment, his gaze assessing. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, get inside." They stepped into the dimly lit room, and the door slammed shut behind them. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "We'll be safe here for now," Silara said, her voice low. "This is Dr. Callan. He's one of the few people who can help us." Alex eyed the doctor warily. "What can he do?" Dr. Callan gave him a small, knowing smile. "I can do more than you think. But first, we need to make sure no one is following you." He went over to a table, pulling out what looked like a piece of alien technology, much like the device Silara had been working on. "Let's see if we can get this working." Alex watched as Dr. Callan began to examine the device, his hands moving with ease, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still in a lot of danger. "How long do we have?" Alex asked, his voice tight with worry. "Not long," Silara answered, her tone serious. "The hunters will be here soon." As Dr. Callan worked, Alex realized how much they were relying on the people Silara knew. It wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a race against time, and the stakes were higher than he ever imagined. His hands moving quickly over the alien device. The low hum of the machine was the only sound in the small room, apart from the occasional rustling of papers and the quiet ticking of an old clock on the wall. Sci-Fi paced back and forth, her golden eyes flickering in the dim light. Alex sat on a worn-out chair, his mind racing. The reality of the situation had sunk in deep. He was no longer just a man trying to live a quiet life. He was a part of a much bigger story. The bounty hunters were closing in, and it wasn't just Sci-Fi's life on the line anymore. It was his too. Finally, Dr. Callan spoke. "It's ready." Alex stood up, his muscles stiff from the long wait. "What now?" Sci-Fi's eyes met his, determination flashing in them. "Now we fight." The weight of her words hit Alex like a wave. He hadn't signed up for a fight, but here they were, standing on the edge of a battle he couldn't escape. "We can't stay here much longer," Dr. Callan added, his voice serious. "The signal has been sent. The hunters will be coming for us soon. We need to move, and we need to be ready." Alex's stomach churned. "How exactly do we fight them?" Sci-Fi stepped forward, pulling out a sleek, compact weapon from her belt. It looked like nothing Alex had ever seen. Too advanced, too alien. "We don't need to fight them head-on. I'll make sure the device works, and once it's activated, we'll have a chance to escape." "And if they catch us first?" Alex asked, his voice shaking slightly. Sci-Fi gave him a calm look. "If they catch us, we'll fight." Dr. Callan walked over to a small door at the back of the room. "I've rigged up a few things. If we're attacked, there's a hidden tunnel beneath the house that leads to the outskirts of the city." Alex glanced between them, the seriousness in their expressions sinking in. "You're both acting like we've already lost." "No," Sci-Fi said firmly. "We haven't lost. Not yet." Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He hadn't been trained for this. He wasn't a soldier or a hero. But the truth was, he had already done things he never thought he could. He had helped Sci-Fi, and now he had to see this through. A loud crash interrupted his thoughts. The front door slammed open with terrifying force. "They're here," Sci-Fi whispered, her hand reaching for the weapon at her side. The room fell silent except for the sound of breathing. Footsteps echoed outside, growing closer, heavier. Alex's chest tightened, and his palms grew slick with sweat. Sci-Fi nodded to Dr. Callan, who quickly moved to the back of the room. "Get to the tunnel. I'll hold them off," she said to Alex. Before Alex could protest, she activated the alien device, and a soft, buzzing hum filled the room. The air seemed to vibrate as the machine powered up. "Now," Sci-Fi shouted, firing a blast from her weapon at the door, sending a shockwave of energy that rattled the walls. Alex didn't hesitate. He ran toward the hidden tunnel, his heart pounding in his chest. As he slipped into the dark passage, he glanced back at Sci-Fi, still fighting, still pushing forward with every ounce of her being. The chase wasn't over yet, and Alex realized with a strange sense of resolve that it never would be.